Hello, beautiful humans. Welcome back to the show. I have Candice Rebollo here. How did I do?
You did amazing. You did very, very good. I give it a B plus.
I'll take a B plus. I'll take a B plus. And you are an intuitive coach, a clairvoyant psychic, and a master breathwork detox facilitator. And I would love to welcome you to the show. If you like to
Thank
say
you.
hello for a moment.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here and to share, what it is that I do and just connect with you and your powerhouse of like beauty and the community you're creating, and just super grateful, very grounded with that little kind of exercise you had us go through in the beginning here, grounded and feeling grateful.
Mm. Yeah. So what Candice is speaking to is, and if you're in my world, I ground in every conversation with coming back to presence, because we live in a world that is constantly pulling us from presence for very divinely orchestrated reasons. But, you sent me a beautifully long bio. Oh my gosh. And just all of the topics that we can cover. And I feel a resonance with you in the sense that it's like the way that I look at it, and I'd be curious to know. Like, I am my brand, and I have all of these tools and all of these pieces of me that are just innately a part of me. And it's very expansive. And when I saw the topics that we could cover, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's endless. It's such a beautiful thing. And that also kind of coincides with your work as well. So we'll definitely get into that more, but I would love from your mouth for you to share exactly who you are and how you serve, and allow our audience to kind of get to know you a bit better.
Yes, would love to. So again, my name's Candice. I am an intuition coach. One of the things that I do very well is I sort of have these parts of myself, right? I have this part that's for corporate, that's a bit more, easily digestible for the masses, where I do these corporate clearings and these business clearings to allow companies, teams, etc., get on the same page, clear the old karma of the business and welcome in the new for more abundance, for stronger leadership, and for overall just like moving the needle, pushing the company ahead in their mission and vision in a way that's very clean and concise. Then there's the side of me that's like, she's the psychic medium. She's out here clearing the dark attachments and entity-based stuff and able to see these things within your lineage, help you tap into your gifts as a psychic medium, train you within those skills, and provide so many tools that help you understand how you can emotionally process the things that likely you never had the chance to when you were younger. And in doing so, so much can expand in your life: money, love, manifestation. I mean, you name it. I help my clients through it. And my passion, my absolute passion, is to find light workers who know they're light workers, but like, I don't know where to start. I love to take them in and I love to bring them through any of my certification processes, because in that process, whether it's psychic mediumship, whether it's psychic somatics, ancestral alignments, I can clear you out and help you process all the old things that you never again got the chance to, while teaching you a tool to be able to take out into the world and do sessions for other people, sessions that are mind-blowing, that provide breakthrough, that provide deep insight, cathartic release for clients and people. And it's so satisfying on all levels for me, because I see them grow, then I see them take the work out in the world, and I just absolutely I love the things that I do.
Beautiful. So my question to you is, what is your definition of a light worker?
Oh, a light worker is someone who came here on a mission to likely help others clear their darker karma and or step into the highest version of themselves. So I see it as like a mixture of people who help others do their own shadow work, and those who really kind of trailblaze the path ahead to say, hey, this is where the world frequency is right now. This is where we're going. This way, follow this way. It's like those with the torch, that's what I see light workers as.
I love that. It's like the torch bearers are the light workers, right? Because we hold the light.
Exactly.
Mm. So would you say that being a light worker is challenging in the sense that because we're bearing the torch and going against the grain and doing things a bit different than much of the collective, would you say that it's generally a challenging journey for most light workers in that sense,
Oh,
being
yes.
visible, being seen, releasing fear of using your voice? I know that has been my much of my journey has been really honoring my authenticity and my integrity of my truth, and not needing anybody to even believe it or understand it, but to really just be okay in my own shoes. And I actually feel this wave of emotions coming over me because like I'm still actively in it, and it's
Yeah.
now public that I'm in my second trimester, I'm stepping into motherhood, and I really feel like this child is supporting me in that even more.
Yeah.
And I just feel like what a gift, even if I can just let myself be a beacon of light for others, just to, if it's like, if all of us could just be in integrity with who we truly are at our core, imagine the world that that would look like. So, yeah, I would love your feedback on that in terms of fears, in terms of really what we go through, all humans, but really those of us who are kind of paradigm shifters in this way.
Yeah. For every single light worker, I don't know not one who has just come onto this planet knowing exactly what they're here to do and not having ever faced a challenge to get there. There is something, some challenge. And if you're like me, numerous challenges to get from where you are to, again, what you're saying, which is like your most authentic self, because the light worker aspect of you is literally just integration. We're pulling all the natural parts of you, the normal parts of you that you've been taught are not normal. We're actually pulling all of those things back into yourself so that you're not this fragmented person with leaky energy, fearful of what people think, fearful of your family system and rejection and all these things, towards society, about society, how you see the world, how the world sees you, all these things, but really, really owning yourself authentically from the inside out. That means the dark stuff and the light stuff. And I
Mhm.
see this process a lot where light workers, I call it the like, I've heard this coin before. I don't know from where, but I really took it and I ran with it, where it's working through your light worker persecution imprint. Each one of us as light workers, as star seeds, we're going to carry a little bit of a different flavor of that. For some, it's going to be a closed throat. For others, it's going to be a closed heart, right? For some, like I do somatic work as part of the work that I do. When I did a walk, like an experiential, body experience around my light worker persecution imprint, it was actually all this stuff about suppressed sexuality and not being able to own my body as a woman, not being able to own my sexuality. And that directly correlated with all the sexual abuse that I experienced in childhood too. So that was a major part of the darkness that I had to like overcome, all the shame, all the guilt that brings, all the feelings of not being good enough, right? That brings, and you carry your entire life until one day you wake up. And the thing I see with light workers is you think like there's this perception that when you wake up, it's going to be great. It does not feel great when you wake up. When you wake up, you almost like turn around and face your past and you're like, oh my God, it's like you're looking at a monster. Like, how am I ever going to become a light worker with this thing here that I have not processed looming over me? And so that's like where I feel I come in, because I'm so good at addressing that monster and helping you understand what it is, helping you soften to it, helping it soften, and loving it back into wholeness. So we all have pieces of ourselves that need to be brought back into ourselves. And that's a never ending journey. Like, I feel like once you get through some of the darker stuff in your life, then it becomes like a forever learning experience, and you become more equipped to handle life's challenges, and you become more equipped to handle your evolution, because spiritual evolution is no joke. Like, we're the real gangsters. That's how I see us. Like, those of
It
us who
is
choose,
no joke.
no, it's not. Those of us who choose this path, we know that it is like the most intense thing you can ever do. Like, it is so powerful. It is so empowering. And sometimes it's like clawing
Yeah.
at the beach to not get washed away by
Yeah.
the waves, That's, yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking kind of off the record before we hit record about, me being pregnant and this deep desire, like this deep longing to have my child at home before I even conceived, and so much of my journey has been to like, you know, get underneath that intensity. And to me, like ecstasy is the full spectrum of what it means to be human, which is excruciating moments and like the blissful moments. And that's kind of what I'm hearing from you. And when much of the collective is numbing and not meeting those parts of ourselves, when we do wake up and we begin to feel again, it's like
Yes,
excruciatingly painful.
it is.
And I just have such a different relationship with pain now, which I also feel is part of one of the reasons why I do feel equipped now to embark on this journey. And also clear, there's just so much around, right? Same thing. It's so similar. Like this journey of having my child at home, there's so many karmic things that I feel I would be clearing, like that I'm clearing right now in terms of sovereignty over my body, in terms of my belief in what my body's capable of, in, you know, bringing midwifery that was excommunicated for generations, very, very, very strategically, and trusting in, again, and in my own ability to heal and my own ability to create, knowing that intensity is absolutely going to be present and not being afraid of it. Do I have fears? Abso-freaking-lutely, right? but also there's just like this deep gnosis of like, oh my gosh, the power, the intensity, like the feeling of it all. And I love that you're going there. So let's talk about, what are some things that people can do, right? Because when you're so used to numbing and escaping and avoiding, and then all of a sudden we wake up and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't go back. Because that's usually what happens. You're like,
Yep.
I know things, I'm never going back to that. And you think, but where do I even start? And then you start to open up and you start to feel. What are some of the tools that you support your clients with? And what are some of your, you know, personal practices that can support people no matter where they're at on their awakening journey, in the softening into the intensity and the pain?
Yes. So many tools. Before I talk about those tools, I just want to say thank you for your pregnancy journey and how you're choosing it, because it is breaking so many generational patterns that need to be uplifted, not just for your family, but for everyone. And I know like your followers will be inspired and everyone's birth journey is different, right? There's no right or wrong or
Yeah.
this or that, but like the empowering journey of like how we choose to birth and taking that back, I believe is like one of the number one ways we're evolving humanity into a more spiritual, peaceful, beautiful, loving place, is through how we birth the children. So I just want to say thank you for that, because it's so inspiring for me.
Mm, I receive that. And I know we're going to be talking about ancestral alignments and family constellations. So wherever you want to go, like if you want to
Yes.
start to take it, you know, maybe just give a quick little nugget on where to start. But just, yeah, I mean, it really, let's go with that first piece. And then the second question is related to, this is what starts to happen. Like your life just begins to unfold. And I don't even know, I can't even explain why. I mean, I know why in a lot of ways, but
Mhm.
there's no, like, the power of choice here of, this is what I need to have for my journey of my labor and delivery process
Mhm.
and experience, with the choice that anyone gets to choose. Like, I don't know what somebody else's journey is. I don't know what they chose.
Right.
And that choice piece is so, so, so powerful. So yeah, if you want to speak to that second part of like, when we do begin to wake up a bit, life just becomes so much more magical and miraculous. And we're like, I don't know why, but I have this strong impulse to have this experience. And then we have it and we transform and we're like, oh my gosh, I don't even know who that woman was 9 months ago. So yeah, like
Totally.
let's speak to that a little bit. So people can get excited when they're in the intensity. Like there's always
Mhm.
that breakthrough that happens on the
Yes.
other side.
Oh my gosh, the breakthroughs are beautiful. So when you start to wake up and you're like, uh-oh, like deer in headlights, like what do I do now? That's where you actually hunker down. You sort of dig in your feet into the ground. You get grounded, like you always
Mhm.
just, you know, you talk about so lovely. And you start doing the work. A lot of the work has to do with clearing your lineage, because there are old trap stories, there are old trap traumas that you're carrying that you are unaware of, and you will take ownership of, and you will feel guilty about having, within yourself. But honestly, a lot of stuff does not even belong to us. It's quite funny. And then it's a matter of like, okay, now that I've cleared the old stories, I get to welcome in any and all things I want. So when we do ancestral lineage work, that's one of the tools that I do in a process that I created called Ancestral Alignments. It's basically a modern take on family constellation work. It's a lot faster and it's even more precise, and we don't need as many people to house, the experience, the session. Even just one person, the client, is enough. And we get the chance to peer into the family lineage and see what things are blocking you from your money, from love, from feeling like you can be seen, heard, and understood, from feeling like you can take back your power as a woman, as a mother. For men too, going on their path, clearing out maybe their old wounds. And a lot of men carry their father's wounds as well, which I see often. And those are a lot of the unspoken things that happen in our family systems for long periods of time. And now we get to a place where we're ready to open them and sort of crack them open, like cracking open a shell. And you do it gently and you do it with love. Sometimes I see people approach spiritual work like, got to get it, got to find it, got to dig it out, and then hurry up and move on and manifest this. And actually, it's like, it can be that slow and steady wins the race with this stuff, where it just one layer at a time, nice and slow, nice and steady, because lots of stuff will get moved out at once. And so when you allow yourself to, one, unpack the family trauma stuff, unpack the family ancestral stuff. And mind you, you don't even know or have to have lived through some of the family trauma, or again, know like who it was. It could be from so many generations back that you would have no idea that that thing is still following your lineage now and expressing itself in family members right this second. And through you, you wouldn't know until you do a session. And, for those of us who know, like, we have that going on, just know on the other side of going into those stories, there's so much clearing. There's so many shifts. I've seen my clients go from really meek, shy, self-conscious, afraid, to going out and leading workshops every week, pulling in clients, creating content, speaking freely, not caring what people think anymore, and knowing that their message is going to be for the right person and hit the right people. So I've seen them shift into their authentic selves. And it's like, oh my God, when that gear shift happens, it becomes so exciting, because then we become unstoppable forces. It's like the train is moving and there's nothing you can do to stop that momentum, because there's so much assuredness, there's so much power, there's so much healing and understanding and integration behind what you're doing, that you become unstoppable. And everything that you want is on the other side of that healing. And sometimes just walking with it. Sometimes it's not even on the other side. Sometimes it's like you're moving with the thing, and your success is as you're moving through something in the here and now. It's not always linear, with this healing stuff. So, this is also to tell people, like, don't feel like you need to be fully healed. That's strange and a bit weird. We're never really fully healed, one. And two, you can manifest anything with the right decision making, with the right heart and the right why behind what you're doing. You're good. You're golden. And I feel like the work that I do helps people refine their why and strengthen their intuition on their own path. It's a deep self-trust, and that self-trust is so satisfying. That's what lights me up. That's the exciting part of this. When you get to a space where no one can mess with you, you know what you're doing, you know what you're here for, and you're unshakable.
Yeah, I call that, acknowledging that we are a work in progress and a masterpiece all at the same time, because, on this healing journey, there is that fine line between, right? Like it's just interesting how we start to try to control or want to understand or be like, I'm not, the old stories and the old programs that come through of I'm not ready. And once I do this, then, right. It's like, if I get to this point, then I will be ready. And, that's a really slippery slope. And so much of my journey has been exactly that, like in the midst of some of the most debilitating moments of my life. Like I had a major health crisis and I began sharing my journey, and I ended up leaving corporate in the middle of it. And I still was in massive healing, but I was healing and there was noticeable transformation. But it was mostly how connected I was to my vision, and like that knowing of, this is what I know, this
Yes.
is where I'm headed, and I am absolutely devoted and committed to that. And I feel like that's why the podcast has shifted gears quite a bit, because there's a relatability to that. Because no matter where we're at as a mentor, as a spiritual teacher, leader, or whatever we want to call ourselves, we all still are moving through stuff. That's evolution.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I really think that I kind of want to ask you about this as well, since we're both in the online business world. I really feel like leaders, especially in the spiritual world, does humanity a disservice in that way by pretending that they've got it all together, all figured out, and that they're done. And we know
Mm.
that that's absolutely not true. So if you could speak to that, I do think, it's really important for me, because I think people stop themselves from starting because it feels so unattainable.
Mhm.
And the more that people can feel like, wow, I can relate to this person, or like, wow, okay, that person's in the middle of this, and look what they're creating, and look what they're moving through, and look how they're sharing and expressing. So yeah, let's talk about that. That feels important.
I think the perfect thing to say is that every single time I created something in my business, it's because something really crappy happened just before.
Always.
Almost all the time. Almost all the time. When you see me launch or create something new, just know I just moved something, like I moved through something terrible. Okay. Um, I always like to say, like, the devil, quote unquote devil, the devil stands at the doorway of all the great things you're about to launch, at all the great things you're about to do. And it's going to say, like, oh yeah, you want this thing? You think you're
Mhm,
worthy of that thing? I'm going to push every button. I'm going to trigger
mhm,
everything that you have. And I'm going to see if you really want it. You really want it. And then it will dangle that thing in front of you. And you have to build this tenacity.
mhm,
The spiritual leaders that you see, though they might not share it often, all of them have been through dark stuff. And I think the difference between those who become really relatable and not are the ones who are able to really share authentically.
mhm,
So I'm about to launch something called the Safe Circle. I don't have links for it yet because I'm literally like piecing together my quiz results, videos, and like it's the funnel is like basically complete, and I'm piecing together the things to like really bring it together, to market this. But the Safe Circle is basically going to be a place and space for people to come and explore their toxic relationships and heal through them, heal the parts of themselves that allowed themselves to get into these situations without shame, in a guilt-free environment, in an environment where we can just own our crap with love and with kindness for ourselves. And that Safe Circle was born out of a really toxic relationship that I got myself out of. And funny enough, when I got myself out of the relationship, I found out I was pregnant just a few days later. And in finding out I was pregnant, it shifted so many things. And that person I was in a relationship with became meaner, crueler, even more disgusting towards me. But I saw how, in time through healing, I saw how all of that was related to my childhood and how it was just a repetitious
mhm,
pattern. I was playing out a relationship that was with a parent with this person. And that's how I allowed that process to kind of take hold of me, if you will. I miscarried that baby, that pregnancy, and I did everything alone. I did
mhm,
everything alone. I had not one day of knowing that I was pregnant with a partner, with anyone like physically there supporting me. I had some coaches that were just like incredible at the time, but ultimately I had no support from a partner. I went through that whole process by myself. And I saw in the decision, I knew I was definitely going to keep the baby. Um, had I been allowed to carry the baby full term, like I would be a mother right now. Physically, I kind of like became a mother etherically and emotionally, and that shifted my business fully, which is
mhm,
also part of how so much got birthed through that. Um, but it's like I was able to birth so many amazing programs because I saw what a cruel world it is for single mothers. Because as I was getting ready, like preparing, those few like weeks, that first month I was pregnant for, like, okay, I'm doing this by myself. Like, this is what happens. I'm fully ready to take responsibility for all this. I realized how hard it is for single mothers, how they struggle, the emotional load that gets like dumped onto them, everything that they have to move through and raise a child. So like I said, I ended up miscarrying, which was a whole nother pain cycle too.
Mhm.
But through all of that, I didn't physically have the baby, but I became a mother. I
Mhm.
womaned up. I became so powerful. And it was like one of those situations I needed to help me wake up to how I treated my body, to my self-worth, to my standards, to my boundaries. And I had to forgive myself, forgive that person in time. Like, that was never my goal. Like, it just came in time through my own healing work. And after I miscarried, I have made multiple five figures in my business ever since then. And it
Mhm.
was that event that like kind of dominoed into everything else that allowed me to birth all my programs, that allowed me to like build this whole beautiful membership where we all get to come and heal and freely work on the parts of ourselves that are most in pain. So that is the one of the biggest, like, you know rocket launch. Your launch pad is going to be your pain, those things that you're afraid to look at, those parts of you that feel really like vulnerable and alone and lonely and scared to address your truth. Basically, like, your biggest fears are what you're here for and what you're here to teach others how to overcome. So that's really how I see this process of like taking the pain and into triumph and victim to victor to even transcending that whole pattern. It's so beautiful. So I see my pain now as like, oh my God, like, thank God. I know it sounds crazy, but thank God all that stuff happened, because
Mhm.
now I get to show up and serve like nobody else I know. No one I know combines all the modalities that I do in the way that I put them together for people to really expand. So, it's like looking back on everything, there's not a resentment filled bone in my body, truly. And that's a testament to the work, itself, and my commitment to the path.
Oh my goodness. I just want to thank you for vulnerably and in sharing that. I know that, you know, even though there may not be a resentful bone in your body, I'm sure it still brings you back to the emotions of that experience. And
Totally.
I'm really grateful that you shared that. And I've actually been really fascinated. And this is what's so fun is I never felt prepared for motherhood. And but I always knew that I was meant to become a mother. And I had been like reading all the Spirit Babies books and just truly having conversations with women who had miscarried or who had struggled with fertility and just everything in between. Single mothers. My sister's actually a single mother, and just like looking at and studying and getting curious and truly seeing the gift in these experiences and what these souls are supporting us through. And I can just, from what you shared, I just felt like, oh my gosh, right? You just repatterned that relationship with that parent, right? Through that relationship, right? You
Yes.
forgave yourself, you forgave that person. You you are a mother, right? Like you absolutely are a
Yes.
mother. And that
Yes.
soul, I would imagine, is absolutely still with you. And I imagine you
100%.
communicate with that soul
Yeah.
often.
Regularly.
And it truly, just you sharing that experience can help people see what, like, right, just that, the groundedness, the security, like the safety, just the power, the sovereignty, like everybody can feel that from you as you're sharing what that did for your life. Was it excruciatingly painful? Absolutely, right? Like you were even being in integrity with like fully transparent. I didn't intend to forgive that person, right? Because when we're in it, it's hurtful.
Yes.
Like we don't,
Yes.
but ultimately, that is why we're here, to just be like, you don't have any power over me anymore. And this was the experience, and this is how I grew, and this is what I learned. And you don't even have to be in relationship with that person or see them ever again or communicate. Like everything is done with self. So truly, thank you for sharing that, because I think the more that we can view life through that multi-dimensional lens when we are moving through that, even when it's painful, no matter what I'm going through, I can feel like I know there's something so much bigger at play here.
Yes.
And for my journey, I actually conceived when I sold my house in Florida. I now live in North Carolina. I was in the middle of moving, and there's a lot of instability happening in my life. Both my husband and I are entrepreneurs. We're completely starting fresh. I'm shifting roles and how I show up in my business. And I want to have my baby at home, and it feels important to have a permanent home, and I'm renting right now. So I see why this child, right? Like, in my mind, it's like, couldn't this have happened next year when I have my house and my husband's got his local business and I'm, reestablished and I'm grounded? And it's like, well, where's the growth in that? Like, this soul knows exactly what he signed up for. And I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful for this experience. I was just telling my husband today, I'm like, can you imagine when we get through this, like when we create a human, change our lives,
Wow.
leave the home state that we grew up in, completely start fresh, follow exactly where we believe our soul is meant to be, have this child, like everything is new. And for our nervous systems, I mean, every day we're constantly rechecking ourselves, grounding,
Yes.
right? Like, allowing ourselves to be in our process, having those moments of
Totally.
rupture. And I wouldn't change it for the world. And, even my mom today was like, you have never complained once about this whole experience. And just to have reflected back to me with the people in my life that stability that I'm creating from within, no matter what is happening around me, it really helps me celebrate, this is the work. Like, this is the work. This is why I chose this path. This is what this soul is helping me do. And I want to, like, and I'm like, I want more, mothers or those who have miscarried or dealing with infertility or everything in between. I have a beautiful friend who had a stillborn, and like, she absolutely, I mean, I met her on the other side of that, but she's sharing that story and how she's evolved spiritually and in her service work, and what and who she's calling in is so powerful. And I just want more people to be able to communicate that and share that with the world, and what it's done for their lives on the other side. So I really just ultimately wanted to share my deep gratitude. And I don't know any mother or anyone that's experienced any sort of loss or anything in between who hasn't been through it and back on their journey. And I think so many of us, so much of humanity feels isolated and alone. And even though our stories are completely different, I actually was like softened a little bit and like, like, because you shared your truth, it gave me permission, and it put me at ease a little bit with, what I'm experiencing, even though this is such a beautiful time in my life. So I wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, you're so welcome. That's what we are. We're space holders. That's how I see it. A great leader is someone who can also look at you and say, I get it. And not only do I get it, here's how I get it. And here's how I can relate this story to a story I have. And then how that story relates to where you're headed to and what's on the other side of these things. Because when we own our stuff authentically and from the most, sometimes the most vulnerable, like soft parts of ourselves, we give people permission to do the same. And then that's how I feel like we all fall in love with each other. Like, we really fall in love with each other through vulnerability. It's not like I make multiple 5 figures in my business and that's what makes me worth your time. It's my authenticity. It's my ability to hold space. It's my ability to story tell from personal experiences and help you shine a light on those places that are starting to emerge. Because once they emerge and you're held, that's when I see people in a good way become addicted to the work. It's like something clicks and they're like, ooh, like, this is good. This is really good. Like, it hurt for a little bit and I released something so powerful, but oh my gosh, was that incredible. And then they just can't get enough. That's my favorite. When you just start working with people who are like, I want to learn this. I want to clear this stuff out. I want to start to like tap into the psychic wisdom of my body. I want to learn who my guides are. I want to tap into my ancestry and clear those old patterns. Then you get people who are so turned on to the work because you hold space for where you are authentically.
Mhm.
And then it's just showcased to you and them. And then that's the most beautiful, beautiful part, is for us to share. I think I see ourselves, I see myself in the people I work with, and even those I come on podcasts with, like, we're librarians. We're here to like check out certain books for a period of time, like read and tell the story, and it might be our own, and then like put it back and just like continually teach each other. And I believe that's what genetic code is too. Our DNA, it's like stories. It's encoded story. And when you learn to unlock the encoded story, then you can create something new. Then you're building new protein. Now we're building new stories. Now we're building better stories, epic stories. The epic journey of the hero archetype gets to come through, and you tap into these themes that all of humanity is supposed to experience in all our different colors and flavors.
Mm. Yeah. And that makes a lot of sense, like being turned on by the work, right? Because so many of us are numb to feeling that. We're like, oh my gosh, this is the experience of life. And I think that's when we start to be in relationship with the shadow, the crunchy, salty parts that, we maybe have avoided, because we start to feel life on this full spectrum level. So I would actually love to ask, this has come up a few times, right? So throughout this conversation, right, we've talked about shadow work, we've talked about darkness, like you mentioned, like the monster rearing its ugly head, but you did mention loving those parts back into wholeness. And what I also see is, and I love that so much of your work is related to somatics too, because I believe that if it's not happening in the body, it's just not happening at all.
Oh, I love
And
that. Yeah.
so, related to that piece around the spiritual world, like I'm here to kind of squash the boxes and the rules in terms of how we like demonize the ego, for example, or we try to make something go away. And we hear the words shadow and light, or darkness and light, or good or bad, or whatever, and it kind of gets us back in those patterns of like right, wrong, black, white, good, bad. I want this thing to go away. I don't want this part of me to exist anymore. But what I'm hearing from you, which is very resonant with my work, is like, no, we're going to love that back into wholeness. This is a part of you. There's a
Yes.
reason for it all. So
Yes.
can you speak to that as well?
100%. I tell this to people all the time. I've even talked about it on my podcast. I've learned just as much from the darkness as I have from the light, right? Even if I'm talking on a celestial level, okay? Because as a psychic medium, I see and I clear a lot of stuff, and I'm able to perceive light and dark beings, right? I have, again, equally learned so much about myself through tapping into angelic wisdom, through tapping into people's spirit guides, through tapping into beings of love and light, as well as the beings that are existing in our lower selves, the beings that we attract when we're feeling hyper anxious, even jealous, maybe even hateful, rageful towards somebody for reasons we're not even really clear about. I've learned so much from them too. So when you start to realize the whole grand scheme of life is this whole duality, and it's all here to serve you. It's not some. It's not like pick a side. It's know what you serve, and you're going to face whatever comes your way. And if you do it with love and authenticity, you're going to build a resilience. And that's what makes you untouchable, I feel, to the things that don't align with us in terms of the darkness. How to actually mitigate that is by not being afraid of it and knowing that it needs love too. It's basically a dark part because it's been rejected. It's been pushed down. It's been told, I hate you. I don't love you. You're not worth anything. It's been summoned to do dark stuff. So what do? Sometimes it's not only about just taking something and clearing it. Sometimes things can switch to the light if you give them the chance and you show them the way, and things can serve you in ways you'd never dream. I've seen this all the time, especially like on an ancestral level, where someone has a stuck loved one on the other side for a traumatic reason. That they passed away. Oftentimes when a loved one passes in a very traumatic way, they get stuck on the other side, so to speak, meaning they kind of like don't ascend into a more loving, open space within their consciousness, within their interdimensional travel, let's say. And when you go back and you love them and you show them what their death process was like and sort of hold their hand. Some people, some souls on the other side need their held hand through their life review because they don't necessarily like how they live their life. So it can become an avoidant thing. But when you hold their hand through it and you help them see it's okay and they're still worthy of love, that loved one transitions like that into the light. Now you have like another spirit guide in the light, waiting to serve you, waiting to bring you great opportunities, waiting to help your wishes come true, waiting to help you make the right connections to where you want to go in life. You just upped your spiritual team, you know, just from that sort of healing alone. The same thing can happen with some of these darker energies that I clear. Not always, but sometimes. And sometimes they do just need to be transmuted. We need to understand. But even with darker stuff that I clear, there's always a negative belief system. There's always some sort of negative attachment in a way that your consciousness allows it to be there. So even then, the darkness is going to show us, the dark attachments will show us your negative belief systems that allow that thing to be there in the first place. Then when you shift that, so much shifts alongside you. Again, when you clear something out, you're also welcoming something in. So when you are like kind of in that, when you're not just in clearing mode, but you're in clearing and activation mode, you're clearing and calling something in. That's the magic. That's the beauty. So the darkness serves, y'all. I always tell people the gold, my clients, the gold is in your crap. Look at those things you're really afraid to touch and poke at and like look at, and the things that hurt you the most, your biggest fears, that's your gold. That's what you're here to work on. That's what you're here to do. That's what you're almost always here to turn around and teach other people too.
I had like an online virtual retreat a couple years ago, and Maren Bach Antonsen, who's a beautiful soul, she shared these graphics where it was this gold little child, and they're right. So this gold little child in her bedroom, and there was this dark entity monster looking thing, you know, like cowering over her bed. And it was this sequence of photos that by the end of it, it was then the golden child who became the mother that was enveloping this dark monster as a baby, as a child. I'm going to share it with you because the artist, I finally found who the artist was, and I share it often because it's I share it with my clients as well. It's such a beautiful representation. And then at the end, it was simply just a speck of light. So like, right, it was that first image, and then there was the softening into the transposition of the child turning into the mother that was then holding the darkness as the baby. And then it was just the integration of wholeness is how I perceive that. And that's what I'm hearing from you, which is so beautiful. So I do want to ask you one last question before we can let our audience know how all the ways that they can get in touch with you and what you've got going on. But I think this is important to ask. So when did you start to feel, did you always feel connected with spirit? Like, did you come into this world feeling connected with spirit? And did you have an environment where you felt like that could be fostered and it never left you? Or do you feel like you lost that and it began to come online again? Because I think for me, I lost it and it began to come online very rapidly in my awakening journey in terms of my connection with source. And I never actually thought that it would be possible. I was like, oh yeah, like I would be like, so me 5 years ago, I'd be like, Candice is cool. Maybe in my next life, I'd have some abilities, right? Like I was like, maybe in my next life, that would be my story, but I'm just going to be over here in this box. And, you know, my whole world got blasted wide open. And I do want to show people what's possible in that way. So yeah, if you could speak to that for your own journey briefly, and maybe what you've experienced with your clients and others, and to not compare their journeys, and to be surprised at the soul gifts that come online when you begin to heal and open yourself up.
Yes. So as you begin to heal and open yourself up, the tools, the practices that are going to help you do that, they vary person to person. And for me, it was numerous things that helped bring my gifts sort of back online fully, but I did always sort of have them, but they were shut down. They were shut off by all the abuse that I went through in my own childhood, you know, all in numerous forms of it, sexual, mental, physical, emotional, all kinds of things, you name it. So that really shut down the gift and made me feel like alone, afraid. So I had to find the gift again. And I did that through a channeling course that I did. And I ended up becoming quite advanced fairly quickly. You know, it's like I was getting certified with people who'd been doing this for like 10 years. And I was like 6 months in the journey, and my instructors invited me to get certified. I'm like, okay, this must mean something, you know, so I'm going to follow this. And I did. And it only led me, you know, synchronistically into more and more of the tools that I needed to integrate, learn how to use for myself, and then be able to help others use. So that's really like that process. It was going through the darkness, right? And recovering, reintegration, as we're talking about so much this episode. And then through that, being able to then find what it is that I needed to help me really launch, which again, for me, almost all of it was self-worth, because so much of what I experienced in childhood told me, right, that I wasn't good enough, that I should be ashamed of myself, that I should be ashamed of my body, all sorts of things. So on doing that programming just plops you back into exactly who you are. And then all the spiritual gifts started to flood back in, you know, and then I was reinitiated into my mediumship by my grandmother, who's on the other side. And that was a whole beautiful thing. And I love walking people and especially women through this process of learning to reconnect with their intuition again. You know, my psychic mediumship certification, I walk you through inner child work first, because for the very reason of we have to check in with that part of yourself and see if that part is okay with the journey we're about to head on and embark on, and you becoming a psychic medium. And once that part is integrated, then we're like, then things are in motion. Then we're connecting with higher self, your gatekeepers, your spirit guides, your ancestors. And it's so true that I always tell people, don't compare your experiences to the next person. We're here to share what happens in the space that I create. But just because you don't see all the lights and see all the colors, maybe you just might get a strong sense of feeling in your body as opposed to hearing things. Maybe you only see things. Maybe you smell. Maybe you can smell certain colognes of your ancestors or perfumes. You know, we all have different gifts. So I always tell psychic mediums that I'm training, get out of your way. Non-judgment. You need to be okay for every subtle inkling, intuition, pang that you get, because that's what it is. It's about taking the subtle things that we receive and understanding, oh, wait, that's not so subtle. That's the thing. That thing that I was like ignoring, that I didn't think like was a big deal. That's the like thing. And it might come as like a little whisper, and you're going to think you're making it up. And there's no, in the beginning, there's no distinguishing factor between like imagination and intuition and like how your guides utilize that. I tell people it's the same highway. Imagination and intuition, it's like the same. You got to exercise it.
Yeah.
So I'm telling a lot of the people I'm working with initially, make it up. They're like, I don't know. I don't know what, like, make it up. Make it up. What do you think they would say? What do you feel they would say? And then that's how you start to get like that intuition machinery, as I like to call it, on board. And then things start flowing, because you can just really start utilizing these energetic nadis, these pathways in our bodies that can receive energy and bring us intuitive pulses. And once you clear that nadi system out and you learn to utilize it, it's like your best friend. You'll get intuitive pings like, oh, wait, no. Like once you start just developing your intuition, you'll start seeing and noticing the spaces you belong in and don't, the people you belong around and don't, you know, the environments you belong in and don't. And it's just going to be natural. Your body's going to be so in tune with you that we just flow. We've been so conditioned out of our natural beingness. We've been put into boxes, as you have said too, put into boxes, put into spaces that it completely pulls us out of who we really are. So my journey has been one from dark to light, back to dark, back to light again, and a few times over. And I feel like I'm in a space where I've developed so much foundation, and similar to you, things are pivoting again. And so I think the message that I want to leave people with too is like, don't be afraid when life seems to be falling apart or not going in the ways that you think it should. It's preparing you for everything you wanted in ways that I can't fully explain to you. Just, you know, doing the work is going to help you build that trust muscle. and you'll see that life is really working in your favor. We just got to get out of the way and do the work, and then let the events unfold, because it's going to be beautiful.
So beautiful. Thank you for sharing that piece, right? So hopefully people can feel into, a lot of times it is subtle, and that's why it does take a deep sense of presence and connectedness and patience and grace
Yes.
through the journey. And I always say, I'm not falling apart, I'm falling into place when I have those
Yes.
moments, because we can't see the forest through the trees when we're in the middle of it. And every single time, right, I'm like, oh my gosh, that needed to happen in order for me to be here every single time. So
Totally.
what a beautiful way to close the conversation. So if you can just let our community know the best ways to get in touch with you and any juicy offerings you have. And of course, we'll add everything to the show notes as
Yes.
well.
I will leave your audience with a link called My Third Eye Activation Process. It's going to be a gift for your audience, where they get to book a complimentary consultation, and I provide deep psychic insights for you. We tap into your field. We read what's going on. We read into your blocks and why they're there, and then we map out like how to clear them. So you'll come away with a very like precise outlaying sort of like map to help you navigate where things are in your life right now and how to get where you want to go, while developing your intuition and anything else that you really have on on the burners for yourself, really in general. So I'll share that with your audience. And the ways that you can find me as well, it's on my website, CandiceRebollo.com. That's CandiceRebollo.com. You can also find me at Candice Rebollo on Instagram. That's going to start to become more of my like corporate, clearing business, like Instagram. And then you can find me on Mediumship Muse, which is going to be all things like fully like wild, beautiful psychic medium that I am, the sensual, sexual part of me, the parts that talks about the dark entities, the things that I clear, the dark and the light that I encounter in my work, the funny, the humorous sides of me. Find that at Mediumship Muse. And you can also tune into my podcast episodes there too. And there's numerous courses that I offer. So explore my website, DM me if you have any questions as well. I have psychic mediumship courses, I have psychic somatics courses, and ancestral alignments, which is probably like the pinnacle of my work right now. But yeah, find me on my website, find me on Instagram. Let's connect. I want to chat with you all and help you all through any perhaps darker phases of your life, so that you can see how that's really just setting you up for all the things that you really want. So thank you so much, Lindsay, for having me. It's been so much fun.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being courageous and sharing your light with the world. And this is definitely not, it's our first and definitely not our last conversation and
Yay.
connection and
Yes.
collaboration. So I
Yes,
really do
indeed.
appreciate you coming on and sharing your heart. And we'll catch you next week for another episode of the show. And much love, everyone.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.